that's one way to embrace some of the opportunities, to not just get so worn down but by what we read or what we hear on the news and thinking, oh my gosh, there's no hope. Yes, there is hope.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining another edition of the Faith Talks podcast. Faith Talks exists to offer spiritual growth content to women of faith, and I'm your host, Jennifer R. Farmer. If you've not already, please subscribe wherever you get your podcast. In this way, you'll be notified whenever we post a new update. Now, this is Women's History Month, and Women's History Month is an opportunity to celebrate the achievements of women who've come before us, while also recommitting ourselves to clear pathways for the women who are coming behind us and also alongside us. As an institution with more than a century and a half of service, United Women in Faith has a meaningful legacy. In February, the organization celebrated the first Deputy General Secretary of United Methodist Women, Teresa Hoover, and she was a trailblazing Black United Methodist leader. The organization has also been on the front lines of major efforts that impact our lives today. I'm thinking of everything from abolition to voting rights to education justice to climate justice and so much more. And some, United Women in Faith, again, formerly United Methodist Women, has sought to show up. It's natural then that the organization is concerned and also committed to securing the plight and the progress of women. Now, Women's History Month in 2026 is characterized by rising opportunity, but also rising national and international concerns, including the climate crisis, education justice, a nationwide affordability crisis, and so much more. And yet, when we face challenges, it's natural to look to God, to look up. It's also natural to look back in history to see what those who came before us, how they handled challenging situations, as well as to be in dialogue with one another. And that's really what today's conversation is about. I'm really happy to have an opportunity to sit with Sally Bonner. Sally is the General Secretary and CEO of United Women in Faith. But I'm also excited because today, for the first time, I'll also get to interview Megan Hale. And Deaconess Megan Hale, excuse me. And Megan Hale is an executive for the Office of Deaconess and Home Missioner, which is administered by United Women in Faith. So before we get into questions, I want to just tell you a little bit about Sally's background and also tell you a little bit about Megan's background. So Sally Bonner is a woman of faith and purpose as a leader, mother, sister, and friend to many. She's a proud member of United Women in Faith. And as the General Secretary and Chief Executive Officer of United Women in Faith, she oversees the implementation of the organization's vision, mission, and strategic plan to positively impact the lives of women, children, and youth around the world. She collaborates with United Women in Faith senior executives from the offices of the General Secretary, Connection, Finance, Asset Management, Operations, and Transformation on day-to-day operations. And prior to this current role, Bonner served in multiple United Women in Faith positions, and most recently in the role of Transformation Officer. In this capacity, she oversaw the recent name change and rebranding from United Methodist Women to United Women in Faith. She's also served in many areas of the United Methodist Church, such as Global Missionaries Ministries, a jurisdictional conference delegate or alternate for 3 quadrennia, a women's retreat leader, and in areas such as immigration assistance and reform, community development, and also dismantling racism initiatives at the jurisdiction and conference levels. Ms. Bonner is a graduate of the Perkins School of Theology, and she has a Master of Divinity and Women's Studies certification. I'll also share a little bit about Deaconess Megan Hale. So Deaconess Megan Hale is again the executive for the Office of Deaconess and Home Missioner, administered by United Women in Faith. And in this capacity, she works with those who are discerning the deaconess and home missioner relationship. She oversees the application and candidacy process and also connects with more than 278 active and 118 retired deaconess home missioners across the United States and 20 Africa region deaconess home missioners who are currently administered by United Women in Faith. Now, the Office of Deaconess was first established in the Methodist Episcopal Church in 1888. And every predecessor denomination to what is today the United Methodist Church had a deaconess movement. The Order of Deaconess and Home Missioner was officially recognized as a lay order of the United Methodist Church at the 2016 General Conference, affirming the covenant community that had been active for decades and supporting its continued growth. Fulfilling one of the Deaconess Home Missioner mandates of building global community, Deaconess Hale connects with Deaconess from the Philippines, creating online educational events to share experiences and also inspiration. And so, with that, I'll say welcome to Megan and welcome to you, Sally.
Thank you,
Sally,
Jennifer.
I'll start with you. I'll start with you, and I would just love to hear from you. We're still in early 2026. What are you most looking forward to this year?
Wow, there's so much happening, but I'm most looking forward to two big things. One is we'll celebrate our birthday this month in March on the 23rd, or the anniversary of the organization. And the other is our every 4 year big event and gathering of for worship, for panel conversations, for town hall meetings, for workshops, and just these amazing women speakers and leaders, not beyond our organization. And that event is called Assembly. So we'll be celebrating Assembly 2026 in Indianapolis, Indiana, May 15th through the 17th. And there is a pre event called Soul Care. So I just invite anyone listening to this podcast to go to our website, uwfaith.org, and the first thing that will pop up is Assembly 2026 and to join us. And our theme is uh, do it. No, gosh, I'm getting that messed up. Dream it, believe it, do it. Dream it, believe it, do it. And join us. It'll be a great and wonderful experience that you have probably never had in your life, to be in the midst of thousands of women and to and see these amazing speakers that will be with us. Particularly Stacey Abrams and her mother, Reverend Carolyn Abrams. So join us.
Wonderful. And I heard you say that the organization is going to celebrate a birthday soon. Is it 157 or how old is United Women in Faith?
That is correct. 157 years old. And part of that is March 23rd. And part of that is what we call our Day of Giving. It's a big celebration where women and members of United Women in Faith across the connection here in the United States will be uh, giving gifts to honor that birthday and the celebration. And our theme is grace in abundance. We are familiar with the phrase, God's grace is sufficient. And truly, God's grace has been sufficient for us, but just in abundant ways. And so we'll be celebrating that on March 23rd. And there'll be a phone bank where you can call in to pledge your gifts. There'll be a live video streaming of different locations, how our members are celebrating this big day. And at one point, there'll be a sharing of a video interview with myself and my colleague, Christy Campos, talking about grace and abundance. So, a big, big day of celebration all around.
157 is no small feat, right? And I'm thinking about the moment where we're living, where there's a lot of different challenges, but this is an organization that has known challenges. Do you think the foremothers of United Women in Faith, some of the women who came before you, how do you think they greeted challenges?
Mhm.
Because I know that they had their share.
They were change makers, and they were truly dreamers, and they believed that with God's help, that they could accomplish great things. So part of it was a call. It was a yearning and a burning within them, even though they were in very patriarchal times and, had stereotypical roles as women in those days, but they didn't let that stop them. They truly felt that call from God to do something. And they took the reins and they found a way in, through, and around whatever they had to do to make those dreams come true. And the dreams wasn't about fulfilling something, their own personal desires, but it was about helping women in other places. So we started out focusing on foreign missions. So The first female missionaries from the organization were sent to India. Isabella Thoburn, an educator, and Dr. Clara Swain. And from there, uh, throughout from 1869 to the early 1900s, that was pretty much the emphasis, was sending out women in mission, which was unusual for the time. The church had very few women missionaries at the time, but we escalated the visibility of women in mission and supported them in their efforts wherever they were. And the intention was to go and equip the women on the ground to rise up as the leaders. It was never a colonial mindset when we sent women. It was always about the women, being able to thrive and know what was best needed in their own context. And we were there to companion and walk alongside. And then the transition became Women's Home Missionary Society. We began to look here within the United States. And that led to as part of the Deaconess movement, which you'll hear from Megan about. But it also led to the development of what we call national mission institutions, and that we have about 87 of those still in existence today across the United States. And those are like community centers, and they serve the women and children and families within their community. And so they do powerful ministry and service. So it's always been a mindset of service, of how do we help educate women? How do we help educate children? How do we help make sure that they all have what they need to thrive and to truly be um, you know, leaders in their own right. And so I think they had determination, they had resilience, and they didn't take no for an answer. That no, if they were told no, they just took it to the next level to say, okay. And they found a way in, through, and around the limits of the barriers that they faced. And I think that's still our call today.
I love that they didn't take no for an answer. When you think about this mighty lineage of women, are there any who stand out for you? Like when you think about even your leadership, are there any who stand out for you? Like, okay, I want to model this, or this person, how they worked or how they moved gives me hope.
Yeah, for me, one, I never got a chance to meet her, and you mentioned her name earlier, Theresa Hoover, who was the first African American leader of the organization, with the merging of two denominations back in the 1968, the Evangelical United Brethren Church and the Methodist Episcopal Church merged together. And from that, the women had to find their place in space. We always had our place in the church, in the United Methodist, what is now known as the United Methodist Church. We had our place, but it was now bringing together the Evangelical United Brethren women's entity and merging and becoming one. And that's when we became United Methodist Women. And Theresa Hoover and the women that companioned her were part of bringing that unity together, and to truly be women united and to live that out in their day-to-day lives and across the connection in the church. And so she is one that stands out because I know her task at the table at that time in all of those negotiations. So it wasn't just about bringing the women together, but she had to, and they had to deal with the dynamics of male domination in the church as well as racism. And so racial justice has always been a part and core of who we are as a women's organization, because we know that to be united as one, to be diverse, to be multi-generational or intergenerational, that there always has to be, there are going to be these barriers. And at that time in the U.S., that was the movement of the civil rights, and we have been effective in lending our voice to that work long before the church really stood up and embraced our work through what we call the Charter for Racial Justice. So she's one. And I have to say my mother is the other, because she was a civil rights activist in her own right in my community in Tyler, Texas. And she's still recognized today. Occasionally I'll get a reporter from the local paper saying it's Women's History Month. And when we talk to people, your mother's name keeps coming up. So what can you share, or what can you tell us about her? And so education was her thing, indigent health care, making sure people had access to health care, and also legal justice, that people had access to legal support when they needed it. So those are still some very important issues today that both of these women had to face in their day, and we're still having to be that voice today.
One of the things, thank you so much for sharing that. And I've heard you talk about your mother before. One of the things that I love about United Women in Faith is that it doesn't just send women out to ministry or to missions, but it equips them. And one of the
Mhm.
ways it equips them is through the reading program. For people who may not be aware, can you talk a little bit about the reading program, including maybe some of the books that you've learned about through the program?
Mhm. Yeah, so every year we publish a reading program list of different books that have been vetted by evaluators who read those books, who give, they have a template of which they're weighing in on the book and its attributes and whether or not they would recommend it or not. So every book that may be recommended may not make the list, but we have a committee of leaders who work on that, led by our colleague Emily Jones, and she works with her committee to bring forth this list every year. And there are several categories of the reading program in which the books are listed. One being education for mission, leadership development, nurturing community, social action, and spiritual growth. So those are our things that are core to our identity and who we are. And one of the books, and they're books for adults, and they're books for children, and they're books for youth. And so one of the books that I saw listed that I really want to read, and it's kind of relevant for this time, and it's part of the nurturing community category, and it's called "What We Remember Will Be Saved: A Story of Refugees and the Things They Carry," and it's by Stephanie Saldana. And so that's one that I really want to read, particularly about our present context and how folks are continually being put in places where they become or have to flee for their lives and their well being as refugees. And there are also other books that I think would be of interest in the adult in any of these categories. And then for the youth, there was one that caught my eye, and it is Sanctuary, and just the title caught my attention, and that's by Paulo Mendoza and Abby Sher. And then there's a book by Amanda Gorman, a poet laureate, called and it's for children, Someday Something. And so these are just a few of the ones that popped out for me this year. I certainly there's a way for our members to read a certain number of books, and they get uh, acknowledged for how many books they read. And so we have some strong readers out there who can go through, some of them read most of one particular category, all the books. And I'm just really envious of that because I don't often get to make time to completely read that many books. But I'm grateful that we have members who are inspired and connected to this reading program. And anybody can join it. The books are all listed on our website at uwfaith.org. And another thing that goes along with that and being acknowledged of how many books you read or how you engage with the reading program are the opportunities to listen to podcasts or to view podcasts. Uh, the Faith Talks is one of them. Listening to articles from our Response magazine, as well as Voices from the Field, which talks about our mission and ministry in the field in current day. So lots of opportunities and ways to engage with the reading program. But educating and learning and being aware of not only our particular context, but knowing and learning about what's happening around the world. And you can do that without ever leaving your home with a good book from the reading program.
Thank you so much. I want to pivot for a second and I want to invite to the virtual stage Deaconess Megan Hale. And can I call you Megan?
Megan.
Yeah, okay. So we've talked a little bit about your background and or your work, and I imagine that there could be some listeners who may wonder, not connected with United Women in Faith, of course, but there could be listeners who might wonder in the 21st century, what does a deaconess do? And I wonder if you can share a little bit about that.
Sure. Yeah, deaconesses and home missioners today are not even that different from deaconesses from the early 1900s, late 1800s, in our commitment. So we all follow four mandates. We summarize the mandates by saying love, justice, and service, but we're committed to alleviating suffering and eradicating causes of injustice and facilitating the development of full human potential and building global community through the Church Universal. And so while in the early 1900s, late 1800s, you might see a deaconess and think maybe she's a Protestant nun because they wore garb. They wore like a black dress with a bonnet. And our uniform has changed. We no longer wear that. And some other things have changed about us, but our ministries are still committed to those mandates. You can find us in education, in healthcare, and social work. We even have a deaconess who's a firefighter. But the common thread of all of our work connects back to those mandates and our commitments. And so we are a vocational call. Whatever our full-time vocation is our ministry context. We might be working in the church. We do have deaconesses who work in churches as, administrators, Christian educators, music, children's ministry. And we also have deaconesses who work outside of the church or in relationship with the church. Actually, all of us are in relationship with the church. That's the thing that makes our ministry really unique and special, is we are representing the church in the world, in our workplace, and having that support and relationship to do that work that we are called to do, with the affirmation of the church supporting that work. We also are involved in our annual conferences. We have Vote and Voice at our annual conference. So that happens once a year in the United Methodist Church, where we go to we're divided, for those who are not United Methodist, we are divided into geographical regions. And so we meet in our local region area to vote on different legislation. We can bring legislation, and so that is one way that we also connect with the denomination.
I've heard it said that we emulate what we see. And I'm curious about how you came to this work. I'm also curious about how children and young people, what opportunities they have to see Deaconess. But can you first talk about how you came to this work?
Sure.
And calling. I said work, but I should really say
Oh,
calling.
yeah, it is. It's calling, and it is my work as well. So I was a public school teacher. I taught seventh grade reading and English in the junior high that I went to in Arlington, Texas, Bailey Junior High. That was my first job and my vocation before I even learned of the Deaconess movement. But when I chose education as my job, that was also like I went into it with that being my ministry. Like I knew when I was graduating from college, I wanted to be in a ministry where I could be an example of God's love to kids who might never enter a church. That was kind of my mission and my goal. And so even though I talked about necessarily like churchy things, I was just an example of that love and acceptance and grace. When I was in my seventh year of teaching, I was very involved in my church in Arlington, Texas. And I was very, I was still teaching, and I was also just a little like restless. I think that might be the word. I was looking for a way to be more engaged and more connected to the church in ministry, even though I was already kind of in ministry. And so I went on this a mission trip to McCurdy School in New Mexico, which is one of our national mission institutions. And that is where I learned of the Deaconess movement. We had a home missionary who was working at that school as an English teacher and theater teacher. Her name is Dee Dee Hefner. And I ended up riding in a car with her to dinner and sitting at her table, and then going to her house for dessert and coffee. And I was just asking lots of questions about how did she become a home missionary, and which is very similar to what a deaconess is. It's a relationship that we don't have anymore. The United Methodist Church, it was ended in 1988, but she was still serving as one. So I was asking her lots of questions about how she knew that that's what she was called to, and her ministry was so similar to mine as an English teacher and me as a reading teacher. And so she said to me, "Have you heard of the Deaconess movement?" And I had not. I was coming from the Central Texas Conference at the time, and we didn't have any deaconesses in the Central Texas Conference. So I had never heard of it, but she gave me a brochure, and I went home and I, kind of Googled it and did a little of my research and signed up to attend a discernment event. And for me, back then the discernment events were in person, so I went to uh, Tucson, Arizona, to learn more about it. And as soon as I got there and walked in, the door with all the other people who were discerning and some of the deaconesses who were hosting us, I just immediately felt the connection with those people, even though we had never met before. We all kind of had that common commitment in our various ministries that we were already really involved in. And so I wanted to make sure that it was a space that was inclusive and affirming and welcoming of diversity. That was one of my big questions that I asked when I was there. And when I learned that is what the at the time Office of Deaconess and Home Missioner represents, I said I'm in. And so I applied, and and this wasn't for me. It was 2012 when I learned of it, 2013 when I attended the discernment event, and I did all my coursework and was consecrated in 2014. So that's just kind of my journey to becoming a deaconess home missioner myself.
And then for young people, like how would a young person know that this was a possibility?
Yeah, people often say that we're the best kept secret in the United Methodist Church, and it almost is like if you know a deaconess or home missioner, that's how you learn of it. You see us in our work, in our actions. So um, a young person could learn of a deaconess or home missioner by being in the same church as one, by having a deaconess, serve as their Christian or their children's ministry director, or also it could be maybe a deaconess is out in the community working at a community center. We have deaconesses who are at our national mission institutions that manage those, and so by being in relationship with a deaconess or home missioner is probably the number one way that children and youth would learn about the deaconess home missioner movement. We also, we have literature. You'll find us on Facebook. We have a Facebook page. We have a YouTube channel. So you might see us in those ways too. But in-person relationships is usually the most common.
And when you think about your work and your ministry, are there other deaconess who've really inspired you or who you hold up as an example?
Yes, there are many. I feel like I stand on the shoulders of many great women who have come before me as deaconesses. And even where I am right now, I'm joining today from Brooks Hall Home, which is in Asheville, North Carolina. It is a retirement home that was built for deaconesses and missionaries, and it's owned by United Women in Faith. It opened in 1957, which was um, historically deaconesses were not allowed to be married until 1959. And so this was where women who had devoted their lives to service could come and live after they retired. And so today we still have 10 deaconesses who live here at Brooks Howell Home. And I just earlier, right before I joined this podcast, was visiting with Deaconess Betty Letzig, who is 100 years old. And I just, got to hear a little bit more about her life and her ministry. And she served as one of the executives, so the Office of Deaconess and Home Missioner. And so she was asking me, and I've known her for many years, but she was just asking me about my work. And I was saying, I do what you did. Like we're doing the same work. But I think of all the women who are here at Brooks Howell. They've all been such a huge influence on me. I'm joining it from Deaconess Bev Reddick's apartment right now, where she lives, her house. And when I took my first course, Theology of Mission, I was paired with Bev Reddick as a mentor to interview her and find out about her life as a deaconess and her journey and her challenges. And that's something that was probably the most meaningful project that I ever did that really helped me to understand like relationship with the institutional church, the church as an institution, and the church like with all the struggles that we have had, with church as an institution, but also still serving. And I also think of like Deaconess Clara Esther. She was and is a civil rights activist and a great mentor to me. She's retired, but she's one of the most active deaconesses that I know. And she's just, if I have a question or if I need some advice, she's one of the people that I would definitely turn to for that.
You know, I feel like there's so much of our society where it can be difficult to maintain those relationships. And certainly, I don't think social media helps. But how do deaconess remain connected with one another?
Yeah, we are very connected we do use social media. We have a private Facebook group. So for those who are already consecrated deaconesses and home missioners, we connect that way. We also have a weekly newsletter that I send that goes to the deaconess home missioner community where we can share prayers and announcements and that type of thing. And we also get together in person when we can. So we have the National Association of Deaconess Home Missioner Home Missionary is an independent voice and organization separate from United Women in Faith. They host a gathering every 2 years. And it's usually in person, sometimes it's virtual. But that's one way for us to come together and worship together, have fellowship, learn together. We have workshops and go on site visits and that kind of thing. We're also part of Diaconia World Federation, which is a global organization of different denominations that do similar type ministries as deaconesses and home missioners. And that meets every 4 years. So that's one way that we can connect with each other, but also with people who are doing similar works in different contexts. We just this past July went to Tanzania for the first time. This was the first time in the history of Diaconia, which originated in 1947, for it to meet on the continent of Africa. And that was a really wonderful experience that 19 of us from the United States traveled to Tanzania to represent our order. And then there's also other regional communities that we connect with, like DOTAC, which is Diaconia of the Americas and Caribbean. So that also meets every 4 years, kind of like the Olympics. So on the 2 years after Diaconia, we have the regional meeting. And then we also have just Zoom, when we are not able to be together in person. At the very beginning of COVID and back in 2020, I started a Monday night Zoom check-in, and it still continues. We still meet every Monday night. Whoever wants to just hop on Zoom and see how we're doing. And it's evolved a lot, but sometimes, like right now, we're doing a Lenten reflection every Monday night during the period of Lent, which is the season that we're in right now. Other times we've done book studies, and sometimes we just get on and talk, or we hop on and recommend books and music to each other and various things like that. But those are all ways that we stay connected.
And, do you feel that, do you find yourself being pulled into something else, or have you all been able to just say, this is what we're called to do? And, from where we sit?
All deaconesses and home missioners are committed to love, justice, and service. And there are so many things right now that we're seeing, every single day in the news. It's something else. And it's hard not to be overwhelmed. I mean, we are all overwhelmed, to be honest. Like, it's overwhelming. Part of our Monday night group that gathers just talks about that. And it's a really great way for us to be able to stay committed to love, justice, and service, and to be able to, collectively share what we are lamenting in the world, and also how maybe as a group we could take action. We have a Substack that one of our deaconesses manages, and she has started collecting articles from deaconesses and home missioners specifically about how can we respond to the threat of Christian nationalism and authoritarianism that we're seeing around us. And so that's one way. But I feel like we may be in many different ministry contexts, but we're all connected by our mandates. And we see deaconesses who are working on the front lines with immigration. And as a community, we, support those people. We pray for those people. We, however we can offer our prayers and support. And it's also, we all have different calls. So not everyone is educated or trained to be able to do that work, but we can support those that are. And at the same time, others are, called to write, have the gift of writing. And so they can use the power of writing to influence and advocate for change in that way. So I think that like there are so many ways that we could be called in different directions, and also we're uniquely equipped to be called in the many different directions through our work as deaconesses and home missionaries.
So I'm wondering, and Sally, I'm going to come back to you for this, but I'm wondering what opportunities do you feel like women have today that maybe were elusive or maybe harder to come by before? So, what opportunities do you see for women?
Yeah, I think there's still opportunities for women. I feel like there's some regression of our mobility to rise now, in light of particularly women of color, in light of some of the current administration's rollback on things that we as an organization fought hard to put in place uh, for women and women of color. We've been at the heart of education from even back to our United Brethren Church in their work around educating, emancipated slaves. And we were also about education of women. And I just last week, in last Sunday, was at the Sunday before last, I'm sorry, where it was at Bennett College, which is an historically black college and university in Greensboro, North Carolina. And the school started as a co-ed school in the bottom of a church base in a church basement, not the bottom of the church, but in the church basement, and has grown now 100 years. By 1926, the Women's Home Missionary Society was instrumental in making sure that black women had access to higher education and invested in taking over what had been a ministry that started in the basement of a church and bringing it to a full scale campus, and taking advantage of some land that had been donated to do that. And so it was a powerful thing to be in the presence of Bennett College and to celebrate with our Western North Carolina United Women in Faith, who are very present in that ministry and ensuring that that college can thrive and support the education of women. And so, looking and finding our place in terms of society where we maybe feeling that yearning in our hearts, like those women that came before who answered the call from God. And Megan referenced this a lot about call. I talked about call. To have that determination and that resilience to take whatever gift that God has given to you and put that into service of loving and nurturing community wherever you are. Not all of us are called to go around the world to be a missionary, but maybe it's that to be a deaconess home missioner in your context, or to find a way to connect with one of our national mission institutions. They're always looking for volunteers to serve on their boards, and even though they might have some representation of they United Women in Faith leadership from their particular context, they still need other volunteers. So maybe you have a family member in in that location, and they're looking for someone with expertise in finance or leadership development, whatever the case. But I think we can all listen for that yearning within our heart and asking ourselves, what am I calling to do in this moment of whatever is happening in society or whatever may be happening within your church? What am I being called to do in this moment? And I would say to us as women, it's not, we don't typically take the role of just being complacent or being satisfied with maybe whatever current situation we are in at the moment, but there's an aspiration there to do more and to make a difference in the lives of other people. And so I think there's some need, like Megan example, talking to this to the woman she was riding with, who she was visiting with in her home, to learn more about her journey. So it's through us who have maybe answered that call in some specific way to mentor and to share our journey with others so that they know what's possible, what are the opportunities, and we help guide them in that journey and in that walk. And so I think that's one way to embrace some of the opportunities, to not just get so worn down but by what we read or what we hear on the news and thinking, oh my gosh, there's no hope. Yes, there is hope. God promised that, you know, that God's focus through Jeremiah was to do us good and to make sure that we could thrive in the midst of whatever situation. Jeremiah was talking to people in exile at the time. But what we do know about God is a God of justice who is concerned about those who are prisoners, those who are strangers or refugees or immigrants in our midst, those who are rejected by society, those who are oppressed or facing numerous injustices. And so, where are we being called or where are we being prompted to lend our voice, our presence? Sometimes it's our finances. That may be the only way of what you can do right now, but find a place that you can connect and that whose values align with yours. And I certainly offer United Women in Faith to anyone that's listening that's not uh, a part of us to consider joining with us. And there are many ways that you can connect and live out what you're being called to do.
I love that. Thank you so much. As we wrap up, Megan, is there anything that you would want to add to what Sally just shared?
I mean, I just echo exactly what Sally just shared. Yeah, find your place where you can plug in and respond. If that's from your home, making financial gifts and letter writing and phone calls, like that, you can respond in that way. Or it could be finding an organization where you can volunteer, and of course, being involved with United Women in Faith is a great place to start.
My final question before we wrap: if there is a young woman who's listening, maybe a young teen or someone who's just coming into their sense of awareness, or maybe beginning a relationship with God, and they may be wondering, how do I discern the voice of God? How do I discern what God is leading me to? Do either of you have any tips that you might share from your own experience, or maybe just from the wisdom that you've accumulated from your work?
Sometimes my experience has been, just being, I don't want to say thrown in, but immersed in something that maybe I didn't feel so comfortable with at first. But over time, I began to realize that that was exactly where I needed to be in that moment. And so I'm thinking about, for instance, education has always been a big value for our organization, and I'm thinking about our social justice priorities. I know from my daughter's generation that they're really interested in making a difference, and particularly around social justice and advocacy and what can they do? Certainly vote, but also connecting with things that you're interested in. So we have climate justice that we're working on, but that intersects with so much of, if you're concerned about maternal health, that connects with climate justice. If you're concerned about uh, racial justice or injustice, that connects with climate justice and certainly with our other social justice priority, mass incarceration and elimination of mass incarceration and criminalization of communities of color. And the campaign for that is ending the school to prison pipeline. So if you're concerned about children, connect with others who may be concerned. But it's oftentimes just immersing ourselves in spaces that we think might be a yearning or a calling for us, and getting to know more about the people who are also immersed in that and what has been their journey. And I know for me personally, it's not been a straight line. It's been a zigzag, and it's a lot of listening and putting yourself in places where you can truly discern, and having someone that you can share your heart to heart with, be it a teacher, be it someone in your deaconess in your church, or someone in your community, a former teacher perhaps. There are people who will listen and guide you, but also you have to sometimes learn by trial and error till you find a place that feels like home for you, and you'll know.
I would agree with that, especially what feels like home for you. That resonated with me because that is really how I felt when I learned of the Deaconess movement for myself. And I work with a lot of those who are discerning. Where are they feeling called to be? Are they feeling called to ministry? What type of ministry? And the way that I best discern is often through journaling. I feel like I hear God's voice best when I'm writing. When I'm writing, it helps me to reflect. But other ways that people discern could be listening to other people. Like when I was discerning, one of my teachers that I worked with made a comment to me that I can't exactly even remember what the comment was, but it made me realize that I was discerning. Whatever it was that she had said to me at that moment was, other people sometimes shine a mirror to your face and like tell you what you're spending all your time here. Maybe you're called to this.
But I
Yes.
believe you wholeheartedly. Sometimes
Mhm.
people can see things in us, and then when they call it out, it's so
Yeah,
obvious,
that
right?
Yes. And the other thing I was going to say is what brings you joy. Like, even if it's not easy or even if it's not fun, like it could be hard work, but it fulfills something in you that brings you joy. So if when your work matches that, then I think that that is your call.
I agree with what Megan said about journaling and listening and discerning. That's something that is very helpful for me over the years. But really having someone to talk it out, or if someone says something to you, I know for me about going to seminary, I was very resistant, even though I had heard a call through some Bible study. But finally I said, "Okay, God, you do speak through other people to me, so maybe I need to listen." And I had to work through that and process that over many weeks and months before I said, okay, maybe I am being called to seminary. So
Is there anything that I didn't ask that you wanted to share before we wrap?
I think I mentioned it earlier. Our social justice and advocacy ministry and work, the two focus right now. You mentioned earlier about, how do you narrow your focus? And that's been hard for us because we've been engaged in so much mission and ministry work for 157 years. But several years ago, we had to narrow our social justice priorities and settled on which aligns with our racial justice work and core of who we've been where we've given so much of our time and mission to, with one ending mass incarceration and criminalization of communities of color. And the priority or campaign around that is ending the school to prison pipeline. So we do policy work around that, legislative work, or encourage our members to lend their voice to action around that, and our climate justice of campaign, Just Energy for All, where we are focusing on eliminating carbon emissions because that is what is causing the impact on our glaciers and just our well being in terms of our climate and what it's doing to, as our indigenous and native sisters and brothers would say, to Mother Earth. And that's something we have to be committed to, all of us. No matter what the administration does, we have to keep lending our voice to say, no, we're not being kind to Mother Earth, which will then impact and destroy us in the process. So,
Well, thank you so much for taking time to share your thoughts and to help us celebrate Women's History Month. It's been nice to listen to you and also to learn with you.
thank you. It's been a joy to be with you,
Take
Jennifer
care.
and Megan.
Thank you.